Democrats do not always remember that their base is people who have to work for a living. Democrats do not always remember that the corporate interest party is the other guys and that they're supposed to represent people who corporate interests would prey on if they didn't have somebody defending them. Democrats don't always remember that. But when Democrats do remember that, they usually reap great electoral reward for it. When Democrats push for economically populist ideas, when they push for things that economically benefit working people, it is the closest thing there is to electoral magic for the Democratic Party. In 2006, Democrats won huge landslide victories in the House and the Senate. Some of those victories were the result of national trends in the country at the time, people being really against the Iraq War, for example. But in a few cases, there was something really specific at work. In the great state of Missouri, for example, Democrat Claire McCaskill managed to unseat incumbent Republican Senator Jim Talent. It was one of the biggest upsets that election night. How did it happen? Well, that Senate race was not the only big thing on the ballot in Missouri that day. There was also a proposition on the ballot to raise the state's minimum wage. Claire McCaskill was quite emphatically for it. Jim Talent tried not to take a position on it at all. There was almost nothing in politics that turns out Democratic voters more than initiatives to raise the minimum wage. And in Missouri, that ended up being great news for Claire McCaskill. The minimum wage initiative passed with 76% of the vote. 76%. And Claire McCaskill unseated Jim Talent. She won by 2.3%. You think people turning out to vote 76% in favor of raising the minimum wage had anything to do with that victory? When the story of that election upset was finally written, here's how it was written. Quote, research showed that Democrats in Missouri were twice as likely to vote for Senate challenger Claire McCaskill, who upset Republican incumbent Jim Talent, because of an initiative to increase the state's minimum wage. That was from Congressional Quarterly. Had that minimum wage initiative not been on the ballot in 2006, Democratic voters probably would not have turned out in the numbers they did, and it is very likely we would not currently have a Senator Claire McCaskill, Democrat of Missouri. According to an analysis by the American Prospect, quote, the minimum wage proposition passed in every county, winning 76% of the statewide vote. The grassroots get out the vote effort mounted by Acorn and labor unions on behalf of the minimum wage initiative helped put McCaskill over the top. And so who must be destroyed? The people who work for the minimum wage initiative, Acorn and the labor unions. Yeah, one down, one to go on that. This is the most potent political issue that Democrats have. It energizes Democratic voters in a way that almost no other issue does. Economic populism. This is the reason the Democratic Party exists. Defending people who work for a living and advancing their interests. Economic populism wins for Democrats every time. If you want a Democrat to win an election, put economic populism on the ballot. Put something like a minimum wage initiative on the ballot. Put Republican efforts to strip union rights on the ballot. And get ready to meet every heroic public school teacher and every firefighter and everyone who ever learned math from that teacher or had their house saved by that firefighter. Get ready for America to hoist Main Street heroes onto the crowd's shoulders. Democrats look at these headlines across Wisconsin and say, yeah, enjoy your signing ceremony, Gov. This is the best gift you could have ever given us. When economic populism is on the ballot, Democrats win. In part because it's not just liberals who support things like raising the minimum wage, it's conservatives too. You don't get 76% of the vote for something with only liberals voting, particularly in Missouri. What happens when Democrats decide to champion the cause of the rights of people who work for a living is that they broaden their base of support. A man named Dick Church from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, is not a member of a public sector union. He is not a Democrat. But here's what he told the Oshkosh Northwestern newspaper the day Republican Governor Scott Walker signed Wisconsin's woe-begotten union-stripping bill. He said, quote, public sector workers just keep giving and giving, but they get nothing back. I used to be a Republican, but after what's been happening, I just can't do it. Wisconsin Republicans wrote their union-stripping legislation so it essentially can't be cleanly recalled by the voters as a standalone measure. It is tucked inside a big omnibus budget repair bill, so the Wisconsin state legislature would have to overturn it. And that's why you're seeing all of this energy, all of this mobilization around these efforts to recall the Republican state senators. If Wisconsin Democrats can keep everybody focused on the fact that recalling those senators is how you start to overturn this bill, they will have the tiger by the tail. In Michigan, it's the same story. Expect general election ballot measures to overturn what Rick Snyder and the Republicans have done in Michigan. Maybe even to amend the state constitution to protect union rights for teachers and firefighters and other public sector workers. Maybe even an effort already to recall Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan, already, after he's been in office about 5 minutes. And in Missouri, In Missouri, that minimum wage raise in Missouri that got 76% of the vote, Republicans in Missouri are now trying to vote to lower that minimum wage again. Senator Claire McCaskill just sent out a raise the alarm email to Missouri voters pointing out that Missouri Republicans are trying to do that, trying to lower the minimum wage. She says it's Republicans, quote, taking a 2x4 to Missouri working families, which is both true and has the added benefit of jumpstarting the economic populist divide that drives more animus against the Republican Party and more support for the Democratic Party than anything else in American politics. They will have captured the closest thing to electoral magic that exists in American politics if they can convert these things to the ballot.